Hi everyone, welcome back to a new cooking in quarantine video. I am back today not to only introduce a cooking episode, but I have some special news. This episode will be the pilot episode for today's special guest's new series. To not cause any confusion, I'm here to explain that our special guest's new series is separate from Cooking in Quarantine, but I will be promoting it here on my series. Now, this episode's special guest is Mr. Banas. Topic of the day being tea. Now introducing his new series, Quarantine with Mr. B. Hope you enjoy.
Hey CGS, it's your boy Mr. Banas here, coming to you from a safe distance. Welcome to the pilot episode of a series I'm calling Quarantine with Mr. B. I decided to create this series because I've gotten a lot of questions about my tea drinking habit. I've also mentioned to some of you that I ran a tea club at my previous school, and you seemed intrigued. So I thought I'd share with you my passion for tea and tea culture. But wait, there's another reason. And I'm gonna spill the tea a little bit right here. CGS is in the process of ordering 20 sets of traditional Chinese tea ceremony equipment. This is a huge deal for me, and I'm super stoked for next year. I hope that we can have a new class at CGS, Chinese Tea Ceremony class. Stay tuned for more information about this exciting new class. For now though, let's continue with the pilot episode. I wasn't always a tea addict. All through college, in fact, I was really big into coffee. It is when I graduated from university and moved to China that I became interested in tea. It wasn't even the beverage itself. It was all of the history, the legends, and the different regional traditions that went with it. That's what really attracted me. Did you know? Aside from water, tea is the most commonly consumed beverage around the world. I'm surprised by that because here in the US, you might guess coffee, beer, wine, or maybe soda. The coffee bean that we use to make coffee comes from two species of coffee plant, Arabica and Robusta. One of the many things that I find fascinating about tea is that every variety of tea, from white tea, green tea, black tea, oolong tea, they are all derived from the same exact plant. We simply call it the tea plant, but to get technical, the scientific name is Camellia sinensis. Camellia sinensis is an evergreen shrub that thrives in tropical climates. In the wild, they can grow to be as tall as trees, but when cultivating them for tea, they are trimmed to be short and bushy. This makes it easy to harvest the leaves. So if all tea comes from the same plant, how are there so many different kinds? Well, it has to do with how the leaves are processed. From the moment they're picked, tea leaves begin to slowly wither and turn brown. Oxygen in the air interacts with the cut or bruised parts of the leaf. This process is called oxidation. Think about when you slice an apple. At first, the apple's interior is white and crisp, but wait a while, and it will begin to turn brown. In the case of sliced apples, this oxidation is not desirable. However, in the case of tea, this is the key to unlocking subtle flavors in the leaf. The quicker you halt the oxidation by drying out the tea leaves, the lighter and fresher your tea will be. Green tea, for example, is dried pretty quickly after being picked. Thus, when brewed correctly, green tea often has a fresh, grassy, or vegetal property. If you allow the leaves to oxidize more by letting the moisture remain in the leaves for longer, you'll get darker teas. This is where you get your black tea, which in Chinese is called red tea, or your oolong teas. Some teas, like the curled up leaf of the oolong that you can see here, were intentionally rolled this way to create bruising on the surface of the leaves to help them oxidize and develop certain flavor characteristics that are considered desirable for that variety of tea. Beyond that, there are many other factors that affect the flavor of tea. There is the quality and size of the leaves, when they were picked, and the region they came from. Just like wine grapes and coffee beans, the tea leaves' flavor are heavily influenced by soil and growing conditions of a particular region. This is called terroir. Since this is the pilot episode, let's keep it simple when talking about brewing tea. We'll just talk about tea that comes in a tea bag, and then loose leaf tea. Now, a tea snob like myself might turn their nose up to tea in a tea bag. But I should say, this kind of tea has certain characteristics that make it really desirable. Tea bags contain a blend of teas from different farms or tea estates, and the tea is all ground up into a very fine, almost like a powder. The advantages of this are that the tea has a lot of surface area, so it brews very quickly. And also, since the tea is blended from many different estates or farms, the tea blenders can control for fluctuations in flavor from year to year, season to season, to ensure that the tea has the same flavor profile every time. So every time you open up a box of Lipton's or Red Rose or Bigelow tea, you know exactly what you're going to get. This is the equivalent, I'd say, of like a blended whiskey or a wine that is a wine blend, as opposed to a wine from a single estate from a specific year. Those wines that are single estate will vary in flavor from year to year, and that's how loose leaf tea is. So that was a bit of a tangent. What does all this have to do with brewing the tea? Well, the good news is that if you have been drinking tea using a tea bag, then you've probably been doing the right thing. You boil some water, you drop the tea bag in, you wait a few minutes, and voila, the tea comes out pretty good every time. So that brings us to loose leaf tea. There's a few variables that you need to pay close attention to. For this episode, I will just overview those variables without explaining the specifics for each one. Basically, the variables are this: water temperature, quantity of tea leaf being used, and brewing vessel, and then the duration for which you brew the tea. So going through those one at a time, you want to use a high quality water, a filtered water, or water from a natural spring. The reason for that is the tap water contains a number of chemicals that can mask the flavor of delicate tea. The second is temperature. Different loose leaf teas are going to brew best at certain temperatures, and it can be quite specific. When I first got into tea, I ruined many a cup of green tea by brewing it at too hot of a temperature. The third factor that I mentioned is the amount of tea, and that's closely connected to the way in which you're brewing. As you can see here, there's a variety of different brewing vessels that you can use, from the humble teacup to the very elegant and sophisticated Chinese gongfu tea sets. Another way that is also common in China is one of my favorite styles that you can see here over on the left, and that's called grandpa style. It's where you just simply pour hot water into a glass and appreciate the appearance of the leaves as you drink it. The reason why the brewing method is so closely connected to the amount of tea you use is because, as you can see here, the size of the brewing container will have an effect on how much tea you can use. For the traditional Chinese gongfu style brewing, the ratio of tea to water is quite high. You're basically filling the tiny teapot with tea leaves, so you get a very strong infusion. That brings us to our last variable, which is length of brew time. In the case of a tea bag, they give you a pretty wide range of time, 3 to 5 minutes. When you're brewing tea loose leaf, it's far more precise. And if you're using a large volume of tea, if the ratio of tea to water is very high, then you can brew the tea for very short periods of time, as short as 10 or 15 seconds even. So that is a very brief overview of why I'm interested in tea, a little bit about the plant and the brewing process. I hope that you've enjoyed this YouTube video, and stay tuned for more episodes of Quarantine with Mr. B.